My name's Andrew Gruen, and I study the history of a spaceship video game called EVE Online. EVE Online is the most interesting video game that has ever been made, without exception. And in large part, that's because all of the people who play EVE Online play on one single shared server called Tranquility. For the past 15 years, everyone who plays EVE Online has had to coexist inside the same shared virtual space as everyone else. About half of the solar systems that can actually be visited by players in EVE Online can actually be officially conquered by groups of players working together. Now, when EVE first launched back in 2003, all of this conquerable territory was a completely lawless wasteland. But over time, players started forming informal governments and distinct factions in order to develop militaries and take control of their own chunk of EVE. And so now, fast forward 15 years to modern EVE Online, and you have groups that have evolved to the point where they have tens of thousands of members. And occasionally, these massive and complex player organizations will come into conflict with each other. The Empires of EVE series is the story of large-scale conflict in EVE Online over the past 15 years. In 2016, with the help of my Kickstarter backers, I self-published the first volume in that history up to the conclusion of what EVE players know as the Great War, an all-encompassing conflict within EVE fought between coalitions of more than 50,000 real players. But EVE didn't stop growing and evolving after the Great War. Now I want to write this sequel. A second volume, covering the years after the Great War, and explaining how EVE progressed to its modern state. Volume 2 will be about the next great era of EVE Online, and the climax moments of the story are those incredible battles that you've probably seen in the mainstream news. This book will take you inside those battles, so you yourself can understand why this virtual world went to war, and why it all happened the way that it did. I'm so excited about making another volume in EVE Online's history because there's just so much left to talk about. The first volume was the origin story for politics and power struggles in EVE, but the second volume is where things really get interesting. It's the real story behind EVE's most infamous betrayals and most climactic moments. It's a book about the glorious past of the most interesting video game of all time, and the unimaginably bright future of video games themselves. I want to make this book because this is EVE Online during its most popular era, and I think the world needs to hear this story. So thanks for your time, and please help me make Empires of EVE Volume 2 a reality.